Portrait of two Apache infants in cradleboards, 1888, Ruth Malcolmson, 1906 to 1988. She was named Miss America in 1924, earning the title at the age of 18. In a published article following the contest, Malcolmson provided others with her 10 rules for beauty. Listed briefly, they are: identical twins Janos and Istvan Lukács in 1985 in Hungary. The Lukács twins would wake up at 4 a.m., tend to their animals until noon, when they'd eat a lunch of bacon and bread and continue working until dinner. They slept in a farmhouse built by their parents with clay walls and kerosene lamps. Sometimes it got so cold the two slept in hay beds in the barn with the horses. Neither married, and they spent their days wearing similar clothes, riding similar bikes, and were always together. At the time of the photos, the twins were in their 60s. The two have both since passed away, one in 2005 and the other in 2007. French fashion, Paris, 1908. British fashion historian Susie Ralph wrote about this photo. The date, Sunday 10th of May, 1908, the event, the Prix du Prince de Galles at Longchamp Racecourse. A fashionably dressed crowd has gathered for this important date in the Parisian social calendar. The races are the place to see and be seen, where royalty and grandes dames rub shoulders with actresses and the demi-monde, all showing off the latest couture creations. Suddenly, a furore breaks out as three beautiful models enter the enclosure, for beneath their exquisite and exceptionally clinging gowns they appear to be wearing nothing. To add to the shock value, their dresses are split to the knee, revealing a glimpse of leg, barely disguised by the lightest of muslin coverings. Lorena Sendler, 1910 to 2008. She was a Polish social worker and nurse who smuggled approximately 2,500 Jewish children out of Nazi-occupied Warsaw. UPS worker delivers packages during the 9/11 attacks in New York. I did some digging about this photo, and I found a text in Bloomberg Business from October 2001. The text tells the story of Joe Liana, a UPS worker at that time, that went to Manhattan as soon as he heard about the attacks to help his work colleagues. 28-year-old Marcy Borders, July 19, 1973, August 24, 2015, an American legal assistant who worked for Bank of America at its branch located in the World Trade Center. She survived its collapse following the Al-Qaeda attacks on September 11, 2001. As captured by photographer Stan Honda, who was roaming the streets that day, she became known as the Dust Lady. 17-year-old Julianne Kupka was sucked out of an airplane in 1971 after it was struck by a bolt of lightning. She fell 2 miles to the ground, strapped to her seat, and survived after she endured 10 days in the Amazon jungle. After 10 days, she found a boat moored near a shelter and found the boat's fuel tank still partly full. Kupski poured the gasoline on her wounds, an action which succeeded in removing the maggots from her arm. Out of 93 passengers and crew, Julianne was the only survivor of the Lanza Flight 508 crash that took place December 24, 1971. Mugshot of 19-year-old Zofia Posmish after being arrested for distributing anti-Nazi leaflets, 1942. Zofia Posmish, 1923 to 2022, was a Polish journalist, novelist, and author. She was also a resistance fighter in World War II and survived imprisonment at the Auschwitz and Ravensbrück concentration camps. Zofia Posmish died on August 8, 2022 in Oświęcim, Poland. She was 98. Vance Palmer, a 15-year-old trapper boy, photographed by Lewis Hine in a coal mine in Harrison County, West Virginia, in September 1908. The job of a trapper was to sit in darkness underground and open and close the trap doors to let the mine carts through. Lewis Hine's photographs were instrumental in changing child labor laws in the United States. In 1945, a bomber plane crashed into the Empire State Building. The pilot was flying from Massachusetts to Newark Metropolitan Airport when he became disoriented in a thick fog. After passing the Chrysler Building, he turned right instead of left. The plane collided between the 78th and 80th floors, killing 14 people in total. The crash also injured a 20-year-old elevator operator named Betty Lou Oliver, who was thrown from her post and severely burned from the ensuing fires. When the rescue workers finally got to Oliver, she was barely alive. They proceeded to put her on an elevator and send her to the ground floor. What they did not realize was that the elevator cables had been damaged from the crash. Once the elevator doors closed, the cable snapped, and Oliver fell 75 stories, crashing into the basement. Miraculously, she survived, despite breaking her legs, back, and pelvis. Oliver holds the Guinness World Record for surviving the longest elevator fall. The crash happened on July 28th, which was also supposed to be Oliver's last day on the job. Thankfully, she fully recovered within 8 months and went on to have 3 kids and 7 grandchildren. She passed away in 1999. Hachiko, the Akita dog, waiting patiently for the return of his owner. Hachiko belonged to Professor Eizaburo Ueno, who lived in Shibuya and taught at Tokyo Imperial University during the early 1920s. Every day, Ueno would walk to Shibuya Station with Hachiko and take the train to work. Once he was done for the day, he would take the train back and return to the station at precisely 3 p.m. Hachiko would always be there waiting patiently to accompany the professor home. One day, Ueno suffered from a cerebral hemorrhage while giving a lecture and died. For the next 9 years, Hachiko would go to the station and wait for his owner. He did this every day until his death in 1935. In 1934, a year before his death, a bronze statue of Hachiko was placed in front of Shibuya Station. The reason why most staircases in medieval castles were built to be extremely narrow and spiraling in a clockwise direction is, since medieval castles were built mainly as fortifications, staircases were designed to make it extremely difficult for enemy combatants to fight their way up. Since most soldiers were right-handed, they would need to round each curve of the inner wall before attempting to strike, inevitably exposing themselves in the process. The clockwise spiral staircase also allowed the defenders to use the inner wall as a partial shield and easily allow them to swing their weapon without being hindered by the curvature of the outer wall. The stairs were also intentionally poorly lit and built to be uneven, making it even more difficult for the attackers to gain any sort of balance or momentum during their fight up to capture the castle. Hans Scholl, Sophie Scholl, and Christoph Probst, who were all part of the non-violent student resistance group called White Rose during Nazi Germany in 1942. On February 22, 1943, Hans, Sophie, and Probst were found guilty of treason and executed by the Gestapo. Sophie Scholl's last words before her execution: "How can we expect righteousness to prevail when there is hardly anyone willing to give himself up individually to a righteous cause? Such a fine sunny day and I have to go. But what does my death matter if through us, thousands of people are awakened and stirred to action?" She was just 21 years old. A nurse writes down the last words of a dying soldier, 1917. Seen here is a nurse writing down the last words of a British soldier during World War I. WWI lasted 4 years from 1914 to 1918, with many historians agreeing that 1917 was the worst year of the war. Nurses played a vital role during the war, as they helped troops recover from their injuries and helped them to get back to the battlefield. Nurses also comforted mortally wounded soldiers. Some soldiers suffered from different psychological disorders due to their time being exposed to a combat zone, including anxiety disorders, depression, and battle fatigue, which is now known as post-traumatic stress disorder, which was a condition that was not acknowledged at the time. Before World War II, World War I was known as the Great War. It is infamous for its brutal and almost eerie nature. The war is also known for its primitive and basic technology, which led to much of the combat being hand-to-hand and up close. World War I saw 20 million people being killed and 21 million people being wounded. One window cleaner once said, "It's a tough career. You only get to fall once." The second picture is of the World Trade Center in 1978 and was notoriously difficult to clean since tenants would dump stuff out the window. According to one cleaner, one tenant dumped 20 gallons of strawberry preserves out of their window, causing it to bake onto the window surface. It fell a total of 10 floors. George Moore, aka the Living Skeleton, and Fred Howe, aka the Fat Man, who were sideshow performers from the late 19th century. Here is an excerpt about them in Strand magazine from 1897. Fred Howe's father was a carpenter at Allegheny City Pen, and Fred started to learn the same trade, but soon became too fat. At the age of 18, he joined the Four Paw Circus as a fat boy, and there met his present sparring partner. George Moore was born in Helena, Montana, where his father had a little dry goods shop. Until he was 21 years of age, George worked in his father's shop, but his greatest desire was to see the world. When the first big circus came to Helena, the manager offered him an engagement to exhibit himself as the living skeleton, and he closed with the offer at once. Fred Howe, they soon became great friends. The doctors advised both to take as much exercise as possible, the one to gain flesh and the other to get rid of it. These smart Yankee lads then resolved to combine duty with pleasure, so they went in for boxing. For a long time they practiced privately. One day, however, the manager was told of the fun by some of his freaks who had been allowed to see a set two between the two gladiators. The manager then arranged a round or two, and the moment he saw Howe and Moore face each other, he offered them a long engagement at an increased salary, if only they would do their boxing before the public. Today, these funny fellows are not only expert boxers, but also perfect comedians in their art. Their boxing is uproariously funny. Moore is 6 feet, 3 inches, 190.5 centimeters in height, and weighs but 97 pounds, 43.9 kilograms, whilst Howe is only 4 feet, 2 inches, 127 centimeters high, and weighs exactly 422 pounds, 191 kilograms. An American man carries his Filipino wife and their children in a family portrait, 1920s. Harvey Ross Ball, the man that invented the iconic smiley face in 1963. He never applied for a trademark for the iconic smiley image and only earned $45 for his efforts. At the time, Ball was approached by a local insurance company, State Mutual Life Assurance Company, to design an image that would uplift the spirits of their employees. The company wanted a symbol that would promote a positive work environment and improve employee morale. It took him just 10 minutes to create the iconic design. Ball's son, Charles Ball, is reported to have said his father never regretted not registering the copyright. Telegram and Gazette reported Charles Ball as saying, "He was not a money-driven guy. He used to say, 'Hey, I can only eat one steak at a time, drive one car at a time.'" Albina Malihocevar, a resistance fighter who fought for the liberation of Yugoslavia during World War II. Albina Malihocevar wanted to fight during World War II. When the young Slovenian teenager heard that her fellow partisans had assigned her to be a nurse during the conflict, tears of frustration filled her eyes. But by the war's end, Malihocevar would see plenty of action. Famous today for the scars across her face, which fragmented her gaze, Malihocevar spent the conflict fighting for the liberation of Yugoslavia. After Germany invaded Yugoslavia in 1941, Malihocevar joined up with the People's Liberation Movement of Yugoslavia at the age of 16. And as the war unfolded, Malihocevar grew ever closer to the action. Though initially designated as a nurse, Malihocevar soon went on to fight in multiple battles. She was badly wounded twice at 17 and once at 18. Malihocevar ended up losing an eye, and scars crisscrossed her face. The Arcatico Bridge, built over 3,000 years ago, potentially the oldest bridge in Europe, it is still used today. The Arcatico Bridge, or Kazarma Bridge, is a Mycenaean bridge near the modern road from Tiryns to Epidaurus in Argolis on the Peloponnese, Greece. The stone crossing, which is dated to the Greek Bronze Age, is one of the oldest arch bridges still in existence and is the oldest preserved bridge in Europe. The Corbel Arch Bridge was constructed during the Mycenaean period in a typical Cyclopean style contemporary to the late Helladic period, circa 13th century to 11th century BC. The bridge, which is 22 meters, 72 feet long, 5.60 meters, 18.4 feet, wide at the base, and 4 meters, 13 feet high, spans a 1 meter, 3 feet 3 inches culvert. The width of the roadway is about 2.5 meters, 8 feet 2 inches. Surrounded by others, a couple enjoys some privacy as they embrace in a hole in the sand on a beach in Santa Monica, California, July 4th, 1950. Photo by Ralph Crane. Old photos showcasing the unique and intricate styling of Victorian women's hairstyles, 1870s to 1900s. One of the earliest findings of a selfie taken in Manhattan, Chacon, NYC, 1920, photo by the Byron Company via the Museum of the City of New York. Dewey family cat, who died in 1910, and meant enough to his owner to be honored with a gravestone that stands today over 113 years later. It reads, "He was only a cat, but he was human enough to be a great comfort in hours of loneliness and pain, A man gets arrested for growing marijuana in the 1970s. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed this incredible story. If you liked the video, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback means a lot. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring content. Thank you once again for your support.